Welcome to the Real Estate Explainer podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. I'm your host, Brian Kicksula. Today, we've got Corey Geary on the podcast talking about novations, cryptocurrency, and his move from Phoenix, Arizona to Puerto Rico. Let's jump right into the episode. Hey, Corey, just wanted to say thank you for jumping on the podcast today. There's a couple of topics that I wanted to, really dive into, if you will. Novations, it's what your background was, wholesaling, novations. I'd like to learn more about it myself. I know you've made a transition into crypto, and then ultimately you ended up moving from Phoenix, Arizona out to Puerto Rico. So I want to touch on that a little bit. So let's go ahead and just jump in. If you could just introduce yourself and just tell your story.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. And thank you, man. I'm truly blessed and honored to be here today. And yeah, we'll rewind and tell my story. I got into real estate about a decade ago. So I think it was exactly around 9 years if I were to go look at exactly when it was. And I got into real estate, man, chasing the dollar like anybody else. And it saved my life, I tell people. I was an alcoholic. I was a drug addict when I got into real estate. And through being around like-minded people on the same journey of always trying to get better in their lives, I've been sober for multiple years. And to your point, I live in Puerto Rico now and I have a family. Like all that stuff started and came from the roots of real estate. So I love real estate. I do. And I built a pretty robust, wholesale and fix and flip business in my real estate journey. And one of the pain points that I really hit on early in my journey is when we went nationwide on our wholesaling business. And when it was the cool thing to do back in, I think it's 2018, 19, we went nationwide and we started doing deals all over the nation. Now, one of the biggest.
So when you got started, you didn't get started a retail real estate agent selling to consumers. You went right into wholesaling.
I went right into fix and flipping. And so
fix and flipping.
And on my third deal, I lost my life savings. I lost like all the money I had saved up, my 401k money. I was a blackjack dealer at a casino. So I lost all that. And I still had my job, and the job was a great job. And so I saw the money coming in, but I lost my life savings, man. And that's what forced me into wholesaling. I was like, well, I wonder how wholesalers get these deals. And I didn't want to give up real estate. And so that's what pursued me down that road. I actually went on Google and I typed in, this true story, how do wholesalers get deals? And Mr. Sean Terry popped up with his Flip to Freedom. And Sean Terry's one of the wholesaling goats, in my opinion. He's been around for a long time now. And he's one of the better gurus because he's an actual guru too. So he runs a very high level wholesale operation. I'm blessed to call him a friend today. And I found Sean Terry, and that's how I got into wholesaling, man. And the rest was kind of history of trying to scale the business up from there. And I got to a point where I was like doing 8 or 9 deals a month locally. And I wanted to scale more. And I was in Phoenix. Phoenix is very competitive. You got all the Sean Terry's out there, right? You got Carlson Sal with the All In guys. You have Cody Sperber. These guys are all out in Phoenix. And I was like, maybe the way to scale is to go nationwide. And that was the cool thing at the moment. One of my friends, Nick Perry, he was doing it. Sean Terry had just started doing it. And it was like everyone was talking about, yeah, you got to do PPC, go nationwide. And that's how you scale. Yes, but don't turn your local business model off when you're doing this. That's what I did. It was a freaking train wreck, man. I almost went bankrupt because I ran so deep in the red for 3 months because it's a whole different business model. You don't know how to comp these deals. You don't have buyers for these deals. And it brought a lot of pain points into the company. And I already had employees. I had an office. I had overhead. I was running PPC. Very expensive. We were spending about 70, 80 grand a month.
$70,000 to $80,000 a month on pay-per-click advertising on a wholesaling business.
Yes.
So that's huge. You just went from 0 to 60.
We went
very
fast.
quickly.
I left the year part of building the local business model out. And that was like direct mail. That was bandit signs. It was code calling, playing around with these different marketing channels, and then landing on PPC because PPC, man, it's my favorite lead source, bar none. And I'm so glad I learned it because I can use it in any business now. It's a great tool for marketing. Like you get sellers calling you and they genuinely want to sell their property. Like they really want to sell. They're easier to negotiate with. They're not like, oh, you called me, you give me an offer. It's like,
so then how do you transfer this wholesaling business into novations? Which basically,
good question.
Are you assigning the contract? You're not assigning the contract like you would In a wholesale deal, you're doing a novation or replacing yourself in that
Replacement of
contract.
contract, which is the legal terminology, right? And that's a great question, man, because I built this local model. I went nationwide. I was running in the red. Remember, I had a pain point in my business. The pain point was I was getting all these contracts and I wasn't selling them. I was getting I'd sell 1 out of 5 contract. I can't keep the lights on by doing that. And I was in a mastermind out in Florida, and one of the guys in the mastermind was giving his presentation where we go up there and we talk about our business, what's working, what's not working. And he gets up there and he starts talking about how he's doing novations. Now he's doing this on a local model, and he's doing novations. Half his business was novations, and he made $2 million that year. And I was like, what? And he goes on to talk about how he sells these deals in the MLS. And I was like, wait a minute. If I could figure out how to sell deals on the MLS to conventional finance buyers, that fixes my pain point that I was going through at the time. It seemed to solve my problem, and it did. I went home and I took his paperwork and how he was doing novations, which was a local model and almost like partnering with the seller. And I took it to my attorney and I said, hey, here's what I want to do. How can you protect me the best you can? There's no such thing as 100%. But how could you protect the company and us the best you can with the paperwork? And he did all the paperwork, man. I can't be responsible. For one, I didn't create novations, just how Sean Terry didn't create wholesaling. I didn't create it. And the paperwork was created by my attorney. And that's how it got birthed. And the first few deals I did were very rocky. It was crazy because you were literally combining wholesaling and retail together. And so I'll give you a synopsis on how it works. Novations, how we said earlier, is just a replacement of contract or replacement of agreement. You no longer have an assignment. And so what you're doing as an investor, you're going to lock in this deal up with a contract, getting all the appropriate paperwork signed. There's some additional paperwork, mainly for both parties' protection if you ever end up in a court.
You're fully disclosing what's going on with the novation.
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely.
One reason why I love it too. I didn't like wholesale. I've never liked wholesaling. One of the reasons why is because there's a lot of gray area in there. One of them is you don't tell the seller you're selling the contract, and the buyer doesn't know how much you're making, and you're trying to put this deal together. And that's where a lot of deals fall apart. You're like, oh, I thought you were buying the house. And that's how a lot of these deals, they took place. But when you're novating, you're very transparent. You're like, look, we're going to bring a buyer to the table, and we're going to handle all the inspection. We're going to handle the repairs. We're going to handle the realtors. We're going to handle the complete process from beginning to end. This is a white glove service for you. So you just got to sit back and just collect your check. But we'll handle everything. And of course, we're going to make a fee, but we're going to make a fee out of the buyer. So don't worry about it. What we negotiate is net to you. And that's how it's positioned. And so, yeah.
So you're also bringing in real estate agents, realtors to market the properties on the MLS.
100%.
All right.
100%.
And are these typically owner occupied properties, or are these vacant properties where it's not you don't have the hassle of showing the property? I know that's a big reason that sellers want to use a wholesaler, is because they want to be one and done. They want to sell their property. They want to move to Atlanta. They want to make that move. So are these occupied properties, or is it a mix?
That's a great question. And I used to tell people what kills novation deals. One is if you can't get access to the property, that kills the deal. You're not going to do a novation on that property. Now, you need to negotiate cash, and it better be a deep cash negotiation, because how many investors buy sight unseen? Not very many. I used to when I was in the Phoenix market, because I knew my market so well, and I knew the houses, I knew what I could pay. But typically you can barely sell deal sight unseen. And so that's the first deal killer. The second deal killer is you need time. So to your point, if they were moving and they needed their money in 2 weeks, we're not going to novate that deal. We need to get a cash buyer in there and get that thing closed ASAP, because that seller is going to move. Now, obviously there's a price difference. If they need their money in 1 or 2 weeks, where basically I'm buying the property, or maybe one of my local or closest investors are going to buy the property, then there's going to be a big price difference in that. Besides we used to call it the concierge service, not novations to the seller, or the concierge service. So time, obviously is going to be a deal killer. And the third is condition of the property. If the place is just condemned or unlivable or just a train wreck, just horrid, then it's going to be more problematic to novate it unless you're going to do like a fix and flip type novation, which that's a whole nother strategy in itself. And you can do that, but you have to be aware of that when you're locking these deals up, because if the property is destroyed, it's going to kill the deal. You're not going to even sell that to a conventional finance buyer, even if you're negotiating the inspection repairs. So these are the three things that can kill deals in novations.
So walk me through the conversation, not the entire conversation,
Sure.
but walk me through part of the conversation with the seller and then the agent that puts the property on the MLS and then the ultimate closing. Just because for me, there's a gap. I've been residential real estate for over 20 years, so I understand the closing process inside out. But if you had someone come in the contract and say, really, we have to not assign it, but novate this over to would it be the original seller who's then signing the contract with the buyer that's coming in from the MLS? Is that the way it's structured?
Yeah, although we got an authorization to sign listing docs from sellers so we can sign on seller's behalf. We don't do power of attorneys and we don't sign the deed. So be careful for your listeners who teach that model, because it can get very dicey if you end up in a court of law. If you're signing the deed over, I would just stay away from that. But I'll give you an overall synopsis. Yeah, so most of the time these sellers, here's one reason why I love PPC. The sellers are reaching out to me, but it's not like ugly houses that are reaching out to me. It's all houses. I'm getting everyone under the sun who wants to sell their property reaching out to me. And I would say about 80% of those leads are novatable, because they're not destroyed houses in distress where a seller's got to move because it's getting foreclosed on and they're on a time. That's not what your average PPC lead is. Your average PPC lead is just your normal seller who wants to sell their property. And a lot of those deals are basically retail ready. They might be outdated. That's fine. Maybe they have some time requirements or some time crunch, which you can work with depending on the market. But a lot of times, man, PPC leads, that's why I love them. They're all the sellers from under the sun. And so they'd come in and we'd go in and we talk about all the options. First thing we're going to do is we always lead with cash. You're always going to lead with cash, because one major thing it does is it price anchors them. We would lead with a very low ball cash offer. I wanted them to say no to my cash offer. And if they said yes, I had such a smoking deal. It was like, it was great anyways. But I wanted them to say no, so that way I could come in and lead into the concierge service. And the concierge service was so sexy because we talked about how it's white glove. It's concierge. You don't got to do the inspection of the repairs. You don't got to deal with the realtors. We're going to handle all that for you. And it was very sexy because we're going to give them more money. At the end of the movie, a lot of these times, even though people say, oh, price, not about price, bullcrap. There is price in there. And I tell you, it's about price. When you offer a seller a little bit more money for the concierge service versus a cash offer, 9 times out of 10, they're going to take that concierge service. Now, it also depends on your leads, right? Like I said, I have PPC leads. I'm not doing cold calling on pre-foreclosures here. That's going to be a different type of scenario where you're going to need that cash offer in your tool belt a lot. You're going to use that tool a lot more.
So you're not using a novation on a property that's behind on its taxes. It's a month,
Typically,
2 months behind on its mortgage payment, because you just don't have the time if it goes into foreclosure. You need to be able to. You need a marketable property that doesn't need
or minimum repairs. We would do
yeah.
some repairs to the property even before going on market. If the realtor's like, look, if you guys do the landscape, put some paint in here and fix the cabinets because they're all torn apart. I'm like, okay, get us a price quote from one of your contracts. Like, I would do it. Just understand when you're starting to do those type of deals, obviously it gets a little bit more capital intensive, where basically the model that we built was I wanted wholesaling without taking possession. Wholesaling means when you take properties down, you do buy them for cash or using hard money or private money, and you're just basically quick flipping them on the MLS. Wholesaling is what that's called.
Yeah.
And so wholesaling without taking possession was the business model that I wanted to create. And we did create that. And so what we do is, after we get the contract from the seller, by dangling the carrot of a little bit more money for this white glove service, because most of the time they're calling us because they want convenience. It's not always because they want speed. They want convenience. They don't want to deal with a realtor. They don't want to deal with the inspection, especially the inspection. They hate the inspection and the repairs that could come out of the inspection. We handled that. And most of the time, it was just a negotiation with the buyer because we were only accepting conventional financing. Most of the time. Sometimes we do FHA and VA, but that's a more advanced strategy when you start doing FHA and VA because you might have to make those repairs. So like a lot of the times we're just negotiating those repairs out of the Binzer on the inspection period. And that's how we took care of it. It'd come out of our cut of the novation fee. And so
because you're selling net to the owner of the property, the seller, they know what they're walking with. They don't have
we're paying all the realtor fees. We're paying all the title fees, anything else that's negotiated from the buyer. Ideally, we don't want to go back and retrade the seller. I hate doing that. There's always mimes when the seller might have been lying to you or there's been some stuff that's haven't been disclosed that you might have to go back and retrade that deal. But ideally, I don't want to go back and do that. I want to try to get this deal done for the seller for the price that they need. And I want to make money too on the deal, of course. And that we're providing a service here. And what we do is after we get the contract and get the proper paperwork signed, then we just start. Now we have a Rolodex. I still have that Rolodex, but we built this Rolodex. We just start calling realtors in those local markets and be like, hey, do you work with investors? That was always the first question that we ask. And they'd be like, yeah, we work with investors. Or do you work with wholesalers? Yeah, we work with wholesalers. And then we pitch the novation deal to them. Look, here's what we're doing. Would you be willing to list the property for us? If they are an investor-friendly, wholesaler-friendly type of realtor, most of the times, 9 times out of 10, they would take our deal and list it.
Because they can place it. They may have a buyer already lined up that's buying into the market.
Sexy when that happens.
They'll put it on the market. If they can get a retail buyer to come in, that's great. But they may have an investor that's ready to pull the trigger. And if there's a little bit of wiggle room on that net, then you can make deals work.
And the key point is when you use a realtor in a certain market and you had success with that realtor, you never let him or her go. You put them in your Rolodex, your CRM, and you lock them in and you refer them business too. You make sure that person is taken care of and they're in your network now because they're a valuable asset to your company and whoever else's company that might be practicing this model. And so that's what we did. And we at my height, we were doing anywhere between 30 and 60 of these a month. And so we just built this like massive Rolodex of these realtors who would do these type of deals. And so that way it was easy when we were going on to the back end side to get this deal on the MLS, get the realtor in place, get all the documents signed. And then at that point, we handled pretty much everything. We would handle the realtor, the negotiation with the buyer. We'd handle like the inspection process, what needs to be negotiated after the inspection, or if we're going to make the repairs. We handle all that stuff, even down to closing, dealing with that. The only thing the seller needs to do, because we don't do this, although there's people out there to teach it, we don't sign the deed. My attorney has expressed it time and time again. In fact, I had a time when I got in trouble in Chicago on a deal. Had I signed that deed, I might have went to jail, but I didn't. I got a lawyer involved. We fought it and I was fine. There was a problem on a deal that happened and they were trying to go after me and I didn't sign that deed. And I'm pretty sure that was what saved me. The seller signed the deed. So be careful with that model. That's what the whole power of attorney is used for, where if you have just an authorization to sign docs and lists,
you're signing on their behalf. Yeah, you're not signing yourself.
Exactly. And you're just signing the listing docs. And even like on the listing stuff, like if you have, there's a few documents that are federal in those listing docs that you need the seller to sign, or you should have them sign. I think one
more time, how many deals did you say you were doing per month? Did you say
30 to 60 on my whiteboard at any given time?
Wow.
We built a massive business out of that model. It took a couple of years to do it. And our model was we were a novation company first, wholesale second. That was our model. And it was great. And I even started teaching it. I created the course. I had a mastermind based around it. And it was great. I taught a lot of people this model. And I went first to novations, of course not, but I was the first ones doing it on a nationwide model.
And are novations still active in today's market, or
it is
in the market?
Yeah. If I were to go and start doing real estate today, that would be my first go-to to get money coming in the door is I would start doing novations right out of the gate, because it's just, I made more money per deal. My average wholesale assignment fee was $17,000 nationwide. And then, of course, you have some in California, they're way more, and you have some in Ohio are way less. But nationwide, it was $17K. And novations, my average novation fee was $33,000. So like I was making more money. I was getting more deals done. Yes, there's more headache on the back end. There's more heavy lifting, but you're paid and compensated for that service. That's what you're doing. You're getting paid for that white glove service. So the seller doesn't really have to do anything except for sign a few documents and they're done. They don't want to deal with inspections and repairs and realtors. And that's why most sellers call wholesalers, the we buy cash guys. Now, there's other times, to your point earlier, when they're in serious distress. And like I said, a lot of times those deals don't pan out being good novations, just depending. And that's why you don't want to be like a novation only company. You should have multiple tools in your tool belt. Maybe it's cash, novations. Maybe you got some seller financing in there, especially if you're trying to build a rental portfolio yourself. It'd be great to have a seller financed option in there to start building up some of those properties.
And I think that's one of those things when you're paying the money to do the pay-per-click advertising, you're getting the sellers to call you. You need to know what you're going to do with that deal when it comes in.
You need multiple tools in a tool belt before you can get ROI. Yeah. You got to get return on ad spend. And that's the name of the game. It's just sales and marketing and cracking the code of that. Like you can apply it to any business. It's just what widget you're selling. And at the time, it was real estate, right?
And are you seeing, or did you see the real estate agents in the local markets on the MLS or the local boards flagging every single one of your listings that came in? Or was there not as much issue?
No, there wasn't
in our local market.
Issue. The brokers sometimes would flag it, right? And then sometimes we'd have to get on the phone and talk with the broker. And sometimes if it was the buyer's broker, it could have killed that buyer. And then we might have to go back to market to get another buyer in place.
So I think that comes back to just full disclosure. You want to make sure that everybody involved in this transaction understands what's going on. So that the agent or the broker comes in, they're not saying, hey, what's going on here?
Most of the time, they're going to shoot it down out of the gate, and they're like, "Hey, you don't want the property bad enough. You're not the buyer for us. Keep going." And,
right, and then the segue. I know there's been a shift in your world. You're no longer, or are you still active in novations?
I'm not active
strictly
in real estate
crypto.
No more. I shut my company down at the end of 2022, and me and my family got up and moved to Puerto Rico, and we're 100% cryptocurrency now.
I'd like to thank today's sponsor, CostSeg RX, a cost segregation company. If you're interested in a cost segregation study, log on to realestateexplainer.com and click the cost segregation link at the top of the page. So for me, and this might be the same story for you, for me in my previous life as a mortgage lender, just in a different world, there was so much noise in my day-to-day world. So I had to personally find something that was more, I don't know, let's call it healthy. I switched gears and I got into cost segregation. It's a different, let's just call it a different volume. Is that why you made the move? Why did you make the switch?
So down in my heart, I'm an opportunist, but I'll explain how it happened. So I had built just a massive company. And the end of 2022, I had realized at that time I had built myself a 7-figure prison. I had 15 employees at my height. I had all these deals going on. I was in multiple lawsuits at any given time. I was in lawsuits with the attorney general because of some old telecommunication marketing I had going on before that was going. It was constant stuff, and which is fine. I get it. And that's part of the growth of any company. But I realized how miserable I was. So even though real estate saved my life and took me through the change that I needed in my life, it also surrounded me with a prison that I need to figure out how to break out. And now I could have kept growing the company and put COs in place and CFOs and done all that. But at the time, I was already dabbling with cryptocurrency and I was having some really good success with it. And I went on a spiritual journey. And I don't know if any of your listeners have read the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. That was probably the most impactful book in my life on how to pivot and change what I was doing in my life and to stop clawing my way to success in life and start letting God guide my way to success in life, or the universe, depending on what you believe in. And so during that time, I'm going on this kind of spiritual journey. I'm having this crazy success in crypto. I'm hearing these statistics that there's more millionaires and billionaires created out of cryptocurrency than any other asset class in the world, including real estate. And I'm like, I'm wondering what would happen if I were to treat crypto the same way I treated real estate and put all the hours in and put all the dedication and treat it like an actual asset class versus instead of a casino or just dabbling in it? Or what if I started going to events, joined masterminds, hired private mentors? What would happen? What happened was I started making more money than my 7-figure real estate business. I started making way more money. And I bought my time freedom back. I now do what I want with whom I want, however I want. I live in Puerto Rico with my family. It's the biggest blessing I've ever done because I started to listening to God guide me to success. From that book, The Untethered Soul, was a massive impact. And so I'm an opportunist. I'm going to go where the opportunity's at. Cryptocurrency, there's no doubt that the opportunity is not here because we're at in the market cycle. And you just can't make this kind of money in real estate. You can't. It's not uncommon for people to get a 50x, 100x, 1000x in crypto and make 100 to 200% APY, passive income on your money. It's wild because it's such an early asset class and you are early to it. Where real estate, it would take 20, 30, 40 years to make that kind of wealth. So what we do is we like to use real estate as a different tool now. So we say cryptocurrencies, we want to use as a wealth creation tool. And we want to use real estate as a wealth preservation tool because crypto is so volatile that you could create mad wealth through it, but it's also like volatile on the downside when you understand the market cycles and the bear markets. That's where you bring in real estate and use real estate as a wealth preservation tool. In fact, most of the world's billionaires and even top millionaires did not create their money from real estate. They only use real estate as a wealth preservation tool. That's it. To get off of taxes. That's a great tax haven strategy. Would depreciate your business.
Cost segregation. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great strategy for that. Oh my God. And it's a great place to store wealth when you already have it because it's a great hedge against inflation. It's going to make you some passive income, especially if you're in the money in deals. I never want to find a deal or run a deal ever again in my entire life. Now, if I have to do it one day, because God forbids, I hit hard times, I know how to do it, which is a good skill set. But I want to be the money deals. I want to be LP. I want to be what they call limited partners in deals from this point on. But I'm going to be focusing 100% my time, energy, and money in the crypto space for the next year because this is the beginning of the next bull run. We have traditional finance, Wall Street coming into our space right now. The Ethereum ETF just got approved. It's crazy. You're front running Wall Street. Like you can't have this kind of opportunity in real estate. So it opened my eyes and I was like, holy crap, I know what I'm supposed to do now. Let's act on it. It was the greatest decision of my life. Even up to this point, we're not even done yet. We have another year of the bull run. Yeah,
I think it's interesting the way that your journey went from, let's say, wholesaling, fixing and flipping, novations. It really has been that journey of looking for the opportunities and moving where you feel the opportunity really is going. And it's taking you from Phoenix, Arizona to Puerto Rico, which also offers an unbelievable advantage for individuals that are looking at actively investing in passive income generating opportunities.
Act 60. So yeah, we could talk about that for a little bit. So Puerto Rico does two things. If you are planning on selling a business, plan on selling stock, plan on selling crypto, and you make the gains while you're on the island, you pay 0% in capital gains, which is pretty nuts because crypto doesn't have any tax incentives, obviously, like real estate does. In fact, a lot of the 3-letter agencies don't like this asset class yet. And so you can come out here and you can ride the bull run up and you can sell your portfolio at the top of the market cycle and you pay 0 in capital gains. So that's the first thing it does. The second thing you could do with it, you can also, like I said, I know people out here who are building businesses out here and they're going to sell their businesses and you could do that 0% capital gain.
And that's the intent of the law, or intent when they pass this, is to bring in investors into Puerto Rico after the hurricane to help rebuild.
That's
correct. So it certainly can have a major beneficial impact to Puerto Rico over time.
And you see it.
So absolutely.
When you come on the island, there's pockets where you're like, oh, this is where all the money's at. And you can see the reforming of the
they're gentrifying and rebuilding.
Yes, 100%. And the second thing you could do through the Act 60 is you can create a Puerto Rico LLC. And let's say, in fact, I know some wholesalers here. Say you have a business where you don't need to be in the mainland or the United States, and you could be out here and run that business, then you could funnel that money through to a Puerto Rico LLC and then pay yourself out of that LLC, and you pay a 4% flat corporate tax And that's it. There's no other
4%.
taxes. 4% flat is what that is.
And
that's
then as far as the residency requirements go, what is the residency requirement?
Yep. 6 months in a day out of every year, you need to be on the island. The other 6 months, you can be wherever you want. You can be back in the mainland, whatever state you're from. You can be traveling, and with a 3-year minimum. So like you can't come out here and do it for 1 year and then leave and then expect the IRS not to come knock on your door. You need to commit to 3 years out here. So technically that's a year and a half on the island. I'm on the end of my second year right now. And so that's the other commitment. And the third commitment most people will know is you have to buy a property while you're out here. It doesn't have to be like anything expensive or elaborate, but you do need to buy some kind of real estate out here, ideally to live in. And that's it. Those are your 3 requirements while you're out here that you need to check the boxes off to make sure that you're in good standing, besides getting all the paperwork done and getting the lawyer to file everything correctly for you. You got to pay for all that. There's some costs associated when you first get here.
No, and I totally get it. Living in Florida, there's plenty of folks that live here, as their primary residence just because of income taxes.
Exactly.
So
state
income
taxes. Nevada. Nevada too. And then I'll tell you what it also did for me, Brian. Just like in real estate, I would join masterminds because I wanted to be around people who did more deals than me, who do bigger deals than me. And I want to know the secret sauce, right? Like, how are they doing it? And crypto is no different. If you want to know what's really happening in this space, you need to be around the guys who have bigger portfolios than you. Anybody who's anybody in crypto lives in Puerto Rico.
So one of the things I know, I watch you and Dane on YouTube periodically just to learn and just to get as much knowledge as I can. If the listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out and get in touch with you?
Social media, if you want to just ask any questions, I'm on open book. I got no VA who's in my DMs answer. So it's Corey Geary, just how it's spelled here, on Facebook, on Instagram. It's the Corey Geary. And if you want to learn more about our crypto stuff, you can go to DeFiCashflowSystems.com and you can read through there and see more about what we're doing and what we're about. But feel free to reach out on any questions you have. I love talking anything crypto or real estate. We're not done with real estate. We're just going to use it as a different tool this time around because we have 206 members in our community, Brian. A lot of them are apartment syndicators, mobile home park guys, self-storage. We're the premier crypto guys in the Legacy Wealth Mastermind. And so when the time is right, we're going to be taking money out of the space. And in our group alone, I bet we'll have $1 billion in there. We're going to be placing it in these guys' deals. We're going to be going into their deals. And so it's a great place.
Absolutely. Give me a call so I can do your cost seg studies on those.
Those guys will need a lot of that then. It's going to be great. And yeah, so that's what we got going on, man. So yeah, you could find me on Facebook. Like I said, Corey Geary, the Corey Geary with a the in front on Instagram, and then DeFiCashflowSystems.com if you want to see what we're about and what we're doing.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for jumping on the podcast today.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me, man. Thank you.
If you'd like to get connected with today's guest, log on to realestateexplainer.com and click the Get Connected button on the homepage.